Welcome to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno. Today's guest is assistant coach and technical director for Cavalry FC of the Canadian Premier League, Martin Nash. Martin, thanks for being on today's episode. I'm super excited to talk footy with you and talk all things sports related.
My pleasure.
So you guys are preparing right now is there going to be CPL Island games again, or what's the outlook on the Canadian Premier League like for you guys this year, knowing that last year the Island games were quite a success, and again there's a bit of uncertainty with how things will unravel as the spring goes on.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a little bit of uncertainty too. They put out a date at the end of May. I'm not sure it's going to start then, just with everything that's going on and the new variants. But they're looking at a bunch of options. I don't think they typically want to do the Island Games version again. They want to have a full league again, back to kind of normal, whether there's fans or not. I think that's the route that the league wants to go.
Yeah, and last year was definitely a very unique case, but here's to hoping that things will be able to return to somewhat normal with the regular season. Now, you've been coaching with Cavalry now for 2 years, correct?
Yeah, this will be the third. Yeah.
So you've coached all over, and now are in an assistant role, and I guess as well as the first team coach. So what are some of the things that you focus on in your role specifically with Cavalry, and how do you use some of the experience you've gained to thrive in the role that you have?
Yeah, I think it's quite a big role because we don't have massive clubs. We're not like a European club, so there's obviously recruiting involved, trying to find the right players, the right team, which is always tough because we're big here on culture. So we want to find the right personalities and right fit, not just the best players we can find, because we have standards we want to live to. And then from there, I think the major part of my job is really just training sessions, getting the team organized, and putting the best product we can have on the pitch. And yeah.
How much growth have you seen from the Canadian Premier League since its inception? As growing up during your days of playing, it didn't exist. And I mean, they did have the Canadian Soccer League, I believe it was, for a bit of time, but the CPL seems like a brand new venture that might have a real strong chance of changing the future of Canadian soccer. So what have you seen since its time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a great start. It's always tough to start a new league in any country. And I think soccer is desperately needed in this country. We've got a lot of talented players, and most had to go overseas. In my area, there wasn't. I just came just after the CSL era, and so there wasn't really a lot for me. And I had to go overseas and apply my trade. So it's great now that younger kids are getting an opportunity here to apply their trade, and if they're good enough, they can still go overseas, right? So I think it started off really well. I think we had a great first season. The level of the league actually even surprised me. It was much better than I thought it would be first year, and it's been growing. I thought the Island Games was a great display of the talent that is actually in the league, and I think every year it's going to get better. And I think the squad we put together this year for us is our best squad yet, and I expect other teams to be improving as we have. And I think the league's going to grow quite quickly. It's going to get better quite quickly for the first few years before it plateaus out. So I'm interested to see how good the league is this year, and I expect it to get even better for the next few years. It might plateau at that point, but for a little while. But the kind of sky's the limit, so to speak.
So when you played for Team Canada, you played during an era in which they won to date the biggest tournaments that Canada has ever participated in the 2000 Gold Cup. And that was around a time when it looked like Canada might be going on an apex for the growth of soccer in the country, but unfortunately it wasn't able to really convert maybe as much as people had thought. But now with the inception of the Canadian Premier League and the talents of Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David playing and being stars in Europe, where do you think the possibility lies for Canada to finally make themselves a mainstay on the international stage of soccer?
Yeah, I think it's coming. It's we had a kind of a good era, '86 when we made the World Cup. The next two World Cups, I can't remember the '90, but I know that in '94 we lost in penalties, I believe, to Australia. Was it? So we were right in there with chances of qualifying for the World Cup, and then we were in my first World Cup qualifying, we were in the hex. So, we had an opportunity. We just didn't quite get it. And then we just kind of fell off the map a little bit. I think, we just, for Canada Soccer, we struggled to score goals on the road and win games on the road. And that's what we need to do in CONCACAF. We did fine at home, but on the road, we really struggled. So I think with these new young players and these talented players playing, and now with social media and just seeing how visible they are, because we had good players playing in top leagues in Europe back then, but now with how big Alphonso Davies has gotten and Jonathan David's come on the scene, he's been fantastic. Unfortunately, he's just picked up an injury the other week, or last week, but he's an incredible talent. And with these incredible talents, I think it just brings more visibility to the game and in Canada, and it helps, I think, to have a league for these young kids that aspire to be like the next Alphonso Davies or Jonathan David or players like this. They have to have an outlet and somewhere to kind of learn their craft. And I think the CPL has given a great opportunity to these players to learn their craft in their home country, in a comfortable environment for them. And, as I say, I think for a lot of these young players, like I said, with the league, the sky's the limit. They can make it into these top leagues around the world. Now they're getting the opportunity to play. Whereas players that maybe didn't have the opportunity just fizzled out because they had nowhere to go if they couldn't get to Europe or to another country to play. Now we have it in Canada, and they can grow their game. And with the great rules of, so many U21 minutes and getting younger players in the teams, there's players 18, 19, 20 getting a chance to play at a high level and kind of hone their craft before they can move on.
No doubt. And especially having those people and players that young athletes can look up to really changes the course of how much they participate in soccer, and then as well the quality of play that happens over time. Knowing that someone like Alphonso Davies has won the Champions League and has won the Bundesliga and has done all these sorts of things in such a short amount of time, and he's still super young and has literally changed the position he plays. It's crazy to think that some person from Canada is one of the best players at their position in the entire world. And I think that is really what's needed. So when you grew up playing soccer, obviously playing all sorts of sports, considering that you come from a family of amazing athletes, who are some of the soccer players that you looked up to when you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one I looked up to when I was a kid was Glenn Hoddle, because my family's from Tottenham. Still, everyone in my family, on my dad's side of the family, is still in Tottenham. So that's a club we always supported since we were born. I have pictures of me at 2, 3 years old in Spurs kit. So he was the star when we were growing up. A few other players like Ozzy Ardiles and Chris Waddle and some other guys that came through it were players that I liked, but Glenn Hoddle was he was the best player for me, and I love watching him play. And a lot of his attributes I actually had in my game. So he was 2-footed. He could pass short, he could pass long. A lot of things I was able to get into my game, which really helped me get to the level I did and play for the national team.
That's so incredible to know that there's some of those few players that really just inspire you, especially when they play for the main club you support. Now, obviously, with having played so many sports, what was a moment in your childhood or that you remember where you were just so captivated by soccer? Was there a game or was there a moment that really just is burned into your brain that you will always forever remember, and it just gives you chills to think about?
I mean, just playing growing up, not really. We just love to play sports. Me and my brother would drag my dad in the backyard after work every day, he'd take his suit off, and we just make him play in the backyard. And my dad played semi-pro soccer, so he was very good technically. Maybe he wasn't a great athletically, but had a great skill base. And that was one thing that we had, was a great skill base from a young age, because we were playing every day in the backyard. I think the biggest moment probably for me, as far as just really imprinting the game, was my first game going to Tottenham. That I remember was, I think I was probably about 6 years old. My dad had me sat on the little leaning bar in the standing end and just watching these people play in front of, at the time, there's probably 80,000 people there, because it was a lot of standing room, right? So that was an amazing environment. And just even remember when the goals were scored and everyone's surging forward, it was just incredible to be around those people singing, chanting. It was just, the atmosphere was amazing. And it was just something that really stuck with me. And, always wanted to play in front of crowds like that. And I played in front of a few big crowds, but didn't really get there on a week in, week out basis to those massive crowds. But it was always fun to play in front of big crowds. And I think that was kind of the one moment, if I had to say, was my first Spurs game. Which kind of burnt that into my brain.
Did the Spurs win that game at least? Or do
It
you
was
not
it was
remember?
actually Glenn Hoddle's testimonial, so I assume he won because it was a testimonial game for his for 10 years at the club. So it was more of a friendly, but it was still a great atmosphere, and I still, it was just unbelievable to be in the crowd and see the enthusiasm of the fans and the level of play on the field.
That's absolutely amazing. And there's nothing quite like that first experience that you get as a kid watching a game and just the way it captivates your energy and just the way that people are singing and chanting and going crazy. Now, I don't know if there's a sport that can really come close to rivaling soccer in that regard. Obviously, being in a packed arena at a basketball game or being in a packed stadium in a football game is also super exciting. But I think there's something extra special about watching a soccer game in Europe, especially at when you're supporting the home crowd.
Yeah, I mean the fan involvement, the singing, the chanting, and how into the game they are at every moment of the game. I remember my aunt had come watch my brother play when he was in the NBA, and she couldn't believe that people were leaving their seats during the game to go get a pop or popcorn or whatever. She was like, it's not halftime. It's not the end of the quarter. The game's on. Why are people leaving their seats? She couldn't get it because she came from in England, and you don't leave before halftime. You go up halftime and you're in your seat before the game starts again because they're so into the game. The game is like the center of everything at the stadium. Whereas, there's so much things that go on in North American sports as far as, cheerleaders and um, entertainment around the game. So it makes the whole event's an entertainment event. Whereas with football or soccer, it's the game is the event. There's nothing really else. You come for that event, and it's a special. It's special to go see a top team in any European league, and even South America. There's other leagues around the world that are just as good, but nothing like it. I think the fans in football around the world is amazing.
So I want to take it back a little bit to your childhood now. You grew up in a family of incredible athletes with, your brother Steve and your sister Joanne, and you guys were able to play, you mentioned all sorts of sports and really just kind of dragged her out there and said, let's get going. Let's shoot hoops. Let's play soccer. How long did you guys play all sorts of sports until you like decided to branch into your own individual specific sport? Because I know that people in the world of physical education always talk about how important it is to be multi-sport athletes as long as you can. But when were the moments in the each of your three lives where you started to veer off into one specific sport?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a different era. We played everything: lacrosse, baseball, hockey, basketball, volleyball, uh, you name it. We pretty much played it. Rugby. I think especially for my sister, she just played everything all the way through high school and went on to UVic to you know she captained their soccer team for a number of years. So I think it was she, there wasn't any academy. She just went and played and enjoyed it. In sports with boys, I think had a little bit more, maybe the level me and my brother got to. So we played everything all the way through high school. To be fair, uh, basketball was kind of, we both kind of leaned towards basketball, and I think it started with my brother's friends, and then the friends that I got to around the same time. We're only a year apart in school, so all our friends played basketball, so we just gravitated to school play basketball because that's what everyone was doing. So I still played club soccer till I was till I think I missed a year at about 16. I didn't play soccer for a year, other than high school soccer, which is a 2-month season. But I just kept playing all the sports through high school, and we kind of, as I said, we went towards basketball just because of friends a little bit. I I did try out for a couple provincial teams in soccer, but was always the alternate because we lived on an island and we couldn't make practice. So we were always kind of like, oh, he's good, but can't come to practice. So it's an hour and a half ferry ride and then a drive to a field. And then to turn around, you wouldn't get a ferry home. So we couldn't go to the practice. But I played provincial team basketballs, as did my brother, because it was more of a 3-week thing in the summer and a tournament or two, so it was maybe a month long. But yeah, and so we just we played everything all the way through. We soccer was a bit more for fun at that stage, to be honest. There was a good league that we played in, and we had fun. But Victoria made two teams because we had two really talented age groups, and grade 11 and 12 played in the same league. So they made a team that me and my brother played on, and then they made a kind of a more serious team that trained, like, because we couldn't always make practice because we were playing all these other sports. And our team ended up winning the league, I think, or maybe finished second league, but beat the other team because we had the best players because we were all multi-sport athletes. Yeah, and for me, I followed my brother's footsteps into basketball, and did a short stint at Brown University on their basketball team, but it just didn't work out for me, and ended up coming home and didn't, and was actually training with the national team in basketball before leading in the group that wasn't playing pro overseas, but there's some very good players, and half the actual team that made the '96 World Championship team, and I was training with them and got a call for me out of the blue from Bruce Twomley, who was the Canada U20 coach, and they hadn't really heard of me because I never played provincial team, and they just said, hey, wondering if you'd like to come out and try out for the Canada 20 team. We've heard some good things about you. And it was all from Bruce Wilson, a Canadian national team great, played in the '86 World Cup, because he was in Victoria, knew me very well, and he wanted me to go play soccer at UVic, and so I went over and hadn't played soccer in probably a year, I would say 6 months at this time. I hadn't played in a competitive game. Had a practice. We drove down to Portland, played against the University of Portland, which at the time was one of the best schools in the U.S., and scored 2 goals in the first half, and they kind of looking at me like, where have you been? They were like, you've just made the national team. Like, basically told me on the spot after seeing me play for 45 minutes that you're on the under 20 national team if you want it. So, and at that point, I just kind of went total U-turn and went into soccer.
That's crazy to think about, because I remember growing up as a kid and watching different features on The Score, where when Cabby would interview your brother Steve, and he would talk about, how good he is at soccer and playing in charity matches, and he could have played pro soccer. And here you are, the opposite, like leaning towards basketball, and we're playing basketball and looking towards that, and then you ended up going into soccer. So almost kind of like a crisscross between the two of you. And it's just nuts to think about how easy the transition was from, I haven't played soccer in half a year, to, okay, now I'm on the under 20 national team and here we go. So like, what was going through your mind? Like, that just must have been such a crazy turnaround.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think the thing is, they say the 10,000 hours or whatever, but me and my brother probably had the 10,000 hours in soccer before we were 7. Because we were just constantly out there kicking a ball, playing I think probably by the time I was 7 or 8, I was 2-footed already. I could play with both feet. My brother's right-footed, but his left foot for me looks smoother and looks better than his right foot. He's almost, because and I mean, he has that. The reason he made it to the level he did in sport is because he's just, I don't know the term, but he almost crazy. Like, it's like he takes his deficiencies and makes them strengths. And, he didn't work on his strengths all the time. I'm good at that. I can still work on that, but I'm going to work on this because it's going to make me better. So like, he was like that as a kid, and he turned his left foot into his better foot because he almost overdid it. And that's, the kind of passion, drive to be, make it to the top in anything. Right. And he just had that drive and passion and understanding of what he needed to do to get to that level, right?
Absolutely. It makes me, when you said the term crazy, it made me think of the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan. People talk about getting a real look behind the scenes as to his mindset, his psychology, or even Kobe Bryant or Dwayne Wade. If you ever study into the guys that Tim Grover trained, all of them follow that same pattern of almost like a certain level of psychoticness. Not that they're mentally unstable, but there has to be that super meticulous amount of dedication and work ethic and being really precise. You look at guys in the world of soccer like Messi and Ronaldo. I'm sure that they didn't get to be where they were just from letting their talent carry them, right? Even if they lived in poor conditions, or, Ronaldo grew up in the Madeira Islands. He didn't grow up in the continent with all this money, all these things, and was able to really just dedicate his time to playing soccer. And you guys mentioned the 10,000 hour rule from, Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers. Reaching out before the age of 10 basically almost sealed the fate that you guys are going to be able to become professional athletes and whatever it is you wanted. So that's what that makes me think of when you talk about the dedication that it takes to really get to that next level. And it's not just a coincidence.
Yeah, and it's I think for us it was an obsession with sports, and that's maybe the best word for it. My brother was just obsessed at getting better, right? And I think there's just an obsession we had as kids, and just loved to play sports, whatever sport it was, just to compete. And it was great to have each other there that we can, if no one else was around, we could compete against each other, one on one, or whether it's baseball, pitching to each other to hit, or whatever it may be. We were always out there kicking a ball around, doing something. We were rarely inside. We just always out playing, and it was always a sport of the month or week or whatever it may be. And I think that's the one thing with us. We were both, I don't know if some of it may be natural, but we're both very skilled in the sports we played, so which made things easier because we had good skills. And then I think once you have the good skills, bringing on the extra tactics or whatever else is easier at that point. Once you have the skill base that you can, you can compete, right? So, and I think other sports help with that, right? So the tactics in one sport can carry over to another sport, and just little things you can pick up in each different sport helps you or help me in soccer in the end. And there's a lot even in basketball that carries over to soccer that people wouldn't even think of or realize. And even but it carries over, and even soccer into basketball the same way. A lot of the same principles in the sport. So it was great for us. I think we had a great childhood. Our parents never pushed us into anything. You want to play? Yeah, go play. It was they loved to drive us and watch us play, but they never pushed any one of us. So I think that was also a key to our success. We wanted it. It wasn't our parents wanting it, right?
That's a great point you mentioned. Having that intrinsic motivation and that internal desire to do it is going to yield a lot better results than if you feel forced or under extreme pressure. Because if you look at a sport like football in America, especially with college and the stories and archetypes of guys that are quarterbacks and they have pressure from their dad and their dad's dad and all these things that mount on to why they're playing isn't as a result of their internal desire and drive. And that can really falter someone's experience of sport, which can be unfortunate at times because it's so fun and it unites everybody. And as we saw with what happened with COVID, not being able to play and watch sports really took a toll on people. And now with events having come back, at least in the capacity with, them being able to play, maybe not with fans, but it really has such a positive effect on people's lives, whether they're playing at a high level or whether they're just playing for fun. So that's a great point that you did mention there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of sport. Like less than 1% make it to professional level, right? And it's like I tell my kids, I never push them. I push them to play sport, but not to be anything special more than they want to be, right? So, but the whole point for me is getting them to sport is obviously life lessons. I think they learn from being part of a team, but also I think when they're older, if they can play a sport, you have friends, you have way to stay fit and have fun, right? And I think that's a big part of it because there's that maybe 1% of a population of athletes in all sport, not just one sport. Maybe 1% make it to a professional level or high performance level.
Yeah, it is very tough to make it to the pros, and just carrying the lessons you learn from playing sports is probably one of the most important things you can ever get from it in your life. Because if you don't become a professional athlete, it wasn't for nothing. It was for something. So when you guys grew up, did you watch a lot of sports too, or did you watch basketball? Like, what was the influence like in terms of like watching other sports? Because you mentioned you obviously had watched soccer, but there must have been some strong connection to being inspired by other professional basketball players when you grew up to want to continue to play.
Yeah, I mean, we watched soccer because, well, I wouldn't say we watched a ton of soccer, but we watched like Spurs, England Premier League when big games were on. It wasn't as readily available as it is now, but we would watch, or they used to do the Match of the Day show used to be on here, and you used to get the roundup of the league, which we like to watch. But yeah, we watched a lot of basketball back then. A lot of NBA. It was flying at that time. Michael Jordan had just, was this superstar that just come in the league and everyone was in awe of him. And so we watched a lot of basketball back in that and in that in those days. And I think that was partial to the explosion of Michael Jordan in the league, at that time. I mean, obviously had Larry and Magic before that, but he was just that fresh air coming onto the scene. And I think that first dunk contest he went in, it was just eye opening for us as kids. And yeah, I think we used to watch a ton of basketball and we loved it. It was remember lying on the couch on weekends just watching like a double header, and then we'd go out and play and try to emulate the things that we saw in the games.
That's so funny because right in around that time, I think that's probably one of the most influential eras of basketball history. To have grown up in the era when you're conscious and have your long-term memory and you're like a teenager watching Michael Jordan, I couldn't imagine what that would have been like. That just must have been like, you know, almost like being on drugs, but not being on drugs, because you're just in this trance of watching the greatest player in basketball history, as you know it, conquer and dominate the league, go play baseball, pull back up on the scene, and then win 3 more titles. What was that experience like watching the 90s Bulls?
Yeah, I mean, they were incredible. I love watching them play, and they had a good team. It wasn't just Michael Jordan. He always need a team to win, but he like crunch time. He was just amazing. Hardly ever missed a shot in crunch time. It's almost like he just focused in at that point in the game. And the tragic events that led him into baseball. Which was interesting to see an athlete go. And in the end, I think he did okay at baseball, considering he hadn't played it for years, and took him time to get into it. And maybe not to be able to play in the big leagues, but it was great when he came back to the league. No one really knew what to expect, and I think he did half a season where they did okay, and then he came back and 3 years in a row win the championship again. And I think that mentality and that obsession to win was just amazing to see. I mean, watching a documentary after the fact about the Bulls, just was it last year? It was just incredible to see the behind the scenes, because back then you didn't get that behind the scenes sense. You kind of got with social media, so many more things are really readily available. And I love watching all the sports documentaries, whatever sport it was. I just watched one on Aussie rules, football in Australia. Just love to see different sports and how they work. And but it was great to see that one of the Bulls, just to see the behind the scenes, living through that era and seeing what was going on in their championship runs.
Absolutely. And especially with all the different characters and the people that played roles and this perspectives from the different media members and everything. I remember while watching it, not really understanding the hatred of the rivalry between the Pistons and the Bulls, or understanding, what the big deal was with the Dream Team and Isaiah Thomas not being on, or how the events of his father being killed had influenced him going to play baseball, but then him coming back and what that was like. And then how they were able to piece together with the friction in the organization and being able to still pull everything together to win 3 more titles after he took a break and all this sort of stuff. It's just so fascinating, everything that went on. And considering outside of Michael Jordan playing for the Bulls, they really haven't done anything crazy as a franchise. So just the power that he had to really uplift a franchise with everything he did. Obviously, they had Scotty, they had Dennis Rodman, they had John Paxson, they had all these people that came together, but how much of an influence he had on making his teammates better. I don't know if there's many other athletes you can list maybe on more than one hand who have had that kind of powerful aura over a team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you maybe see it a little bit more in basketball than other sports, because only 5 on a court, whereas in soccer is 11 on a field, or other sports there's a lot more players usually involved. But yeah, it was incredible to see how he pulled people in, held them to standards. Wasn't always the most likable guy, but it was all about winning. And Kobe Bryant obviously had that mentality. I think LeBron has that to a certain extent. So some of these amazing players you see, you don't really know what's going on sometimes behind the scenes, and how they pull other people in and get people around them, and really are about team, because they understand they need the other 4 guys on the court, and 7, 8 guys on the bench to win a championship. It can't just be them.
Martin, I must ask you, with having been, the brother of an NBA superstar and current head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, who honestly have a chance of making the NBA finals, which is just absolutely outstanding. I can't even imagine the excitement that there was in your family, knowing that one of you guys is going on to do something so incredible. Have you ever met have there been any starstruck moments where you've gone to watch Steve play and you see one of his teammates, or you met a Kobe Bryant? Like, have you ever met any other NBA players that were just absolute superstars? And what was that like, if you have?
Yeah, I have. It's funny. I mean, I was there at his draft, and not no one really. We're just pretty calm about that type of thing. Like we don't. I don't really look at, oh wow, it's so and so funny, and I don't know why I'm kind of been that way. I'm pretty calm. Because Allen Iverson, Kobe, they're all met them all at the draft. Um, and obviously I was quite close with Dirk for a long time because Steven was their best friend. So know him very, very well, and Michael Finley really well, and certain guys that So I met a lot of people over the years that he's played with and played against, and yeah, I mean they're just normal people, interesting characters. Sometimes to see them kind of away from the court. We met Shaq in Vancouver. Nothing to do with my brother. Just met him in Vancouver with through a physiotherapist that he was working with. That yeah, and he was a very interesting character at the time. Just a larger than life type character off the court as well. So, and he still is to this day, right? So, yeah, it was good to it's been neat to meet some of those guys just because you watch them play and watch them from afar just to see their mentality and what they're like. So, but not really the type to get starstruck, to be honest.
That's fair. And I mean, when you get to that level of understanding the behind the scenes or being able to be exposed to it a lot more, I'm sure that may wear off, or even just carrying the mentality of knowing that it's not like imposter syndrome. Like, that you kind of belong, or you have that confidence in yourself to know as an athlete, or just understanding that maybe the inverse of that they're not, larger than life or walking water, that they're just normal people too, but have their own quirks, or just so happen to be really, really good at playing basketball. And obviously, usually carry like 5 to 10 inches on the average person, and probably about like 80 pounds, and are just, they stand out in the crowd for sure. But
That's probably the biggest thing is the size of these guys. Some of them, it's like Dirk is 6'11". He just, one of them just towers over you. It's just that's the only kind of thing that's kind of like you look at them in awe because of the size of them. Some of them, and I'd say the other thing that maybe you're in awe of is the not just the size of them, but at that size, how athletic they are. That's the incredible thing with a lot of basketball players that um, they're so athletic and so coordinated, and yet they're six. A lot of them are 6'8" to 7 feet tall, right? So it's I mean, a lot of work goes into it. A lot of coordination needed, but they work at it, and it's amazing to see guys of that size just up and down the court cutting a dime, and some of the things that they can do athletically is pretty amazing.
who's the funniest or most interesting character of any NBA player that you've met in your time?
Shaq's up there. Charles Barkley's pretty funny. Met him a few times. He's a character. You see it on camera in the TNT show. I think he's hilarious. I can watch that show just because he's on it. But he's a real character. He's just out there, the kind of guy that wears his heart in his sleeve and tells you how it is. But he's really funny with it. So it was interesting, meet some of those guys, and just how they can kind of carry a room, and walk in a room, and it's almost just positive energy comes in just because they're so bubbly, right, and funny, and great characters.
For sure. And I can't even imagine how unique and cool it would be to meet all these different types of personalities and just really see what they're like, and know that while they are just normal people, there are different quirks and little interesting things. And that's why I remember going back to mentioning watching The Score growing up, when Cabby Richards would interview guys like your brother, or interview Kobe or Aaron Rodgers, and just seeing the funny side of these athletes. And obviously they carry a very serious demeanor when it comes to playing and being focused, but just seeing them laugh or be themselves and be candid, I think is one of the coolest things about interacting with any superstar athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one good thing. There's other good things, but one good thing with social media when they're on it is that you can get a sense more of what they're like as people rather than just this star that's playing. No matter what sport it is, you can kind of get a sense of them as a person by what they say or pictures they post or whatever. So the social media, it does have some neat things that you can kind of almost get some background information on, people, athletes, or movie stars or whoever, which you wouldn't really have access to in the past. Or we didn't have access to in the past. Apart what could be written for them, you get to sense of the person they are through their social media platforms.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that definitely is a great benefit to the way that fans can engage and interact with athletes now, because you don't have to worry about them seeming like they're on this ginormous pedestal that can never be reached. And there's a lot of positive interactions that creates a better experience for fans too, when you see them engage, and also, just be normal in a way. Like they're not like, oh, they're not otherworldly. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and me kind of thing. And
Yeah,
that's what makes those interactions so fun, or when you see them doing interviews. And I mean, at least for soccer, I know that there's so many different types of personalities, and even in basketball and football, there's lots of different interesting ways that they express themselves. Whereas maybe in a sport like hockey, they're a little more reserved, but I definitely like seeing the full range of interesting characters that there are in sports, because that's, again, to me, it's one of the best things to watch, because it's the greatest reality TV show. It's all real. It's not fake. It's real personalities and people just coming together. And that's what I think, that's part of what makes sports so entertaining, is combining the amazing athletic abilities with who these people are as well.
absolutely. Yeah.
So Martin, we're getting towards the end of our time here in today's episode. So I wanted to ask you a few more questions to wrap up, and we'll do a rapid fire round and have some fun with it.
Okay.
Okay. In the world of soccer, we got the GOAT debate in present day. Who do you take, Messi or Ronaldo?
Ronaldo.
And why Ronaldo over Messi?
I mean, both amazing players. I don't think you can go wrong picking either one, to be honest. I just think what Ronaldo's did for the length of time he has and doing it in three different countries, um, I would lean towards that. There's other players I'd put in the debate as well, but if I'm picking between just those two, I would lean towards Ronaldo myself.
That's fair. If there was to be a movie made about your family's life, who would you choose to cast as the role of yourself?
Jeez, that's interesting. Just an actor?
Yeah,
Ryan Reynolds. He's a Vancouver boy. He's a fantastic actor. Love to see it. He'd make me funnier than I am.
that's amazing. I don't even know if I could have come up with a better answer. That's just perfect. Lower mainland and BC boy as well. What is an interesting fact about yourself that you don't think a lot of people know?
I think a lot of people don't know I was a really good basketball player. I think that's one thing people probably most don't know about me. And the other thing that people don't know or always are surprised when I tell them that my brother's like about 5.5 inches taller. People always think, oh no, he's like your height, isn't he? No, he's 5.5 inches taller than me. So he's yeah, a lot of people don't know there's a massive height difference.
Yeah, I mean, how would you fare in a if you guys played one on one? Let's say if you were on the same heights, like obviously the height difference, has a big impact on basketball. But if you guys just played one on one or 21, like how do you think you stack up against Steve?
Now he'd kill me. When we were kids, we used to have some good battles, even with him being a lot taller than me, because I was a really good shooter. But he was just we had everything. We had a lot of the same tools. He was just bigger, so I had to be really crafty, which helped me, on the court, because playing against someone so much taller just sticks an arm in your face. You have to find a way to get free. So it was good for me, and I think for him, I was probably maybe a bit quicker than him, so my quickness kind of helped him have to figure some things out too the other way. So it was good. I think you got to try to find ways to win in any situation in any sport, and I think our little battles with each other, we've tried to find ways to win, and it helped us in our careers as we moved into different sports.
For sure. And the final wrap up question I want to ask is, who is the greatest player you've ever taken the pitch with or against in your playing career?
Oof. Greatest. Um, in the era they were, there's a few. I mean, Juninho was good. The little Brazilian midfielder, was unbelievably quick when he was at Middlesbrough. He was one of the best players I played against. Just got up front. I didn't realize how quick he was and how skillful he was. He was amazing to watch run by me. um, yeah, I mean, I've played against some good countries. I can't like remember like everyone's names. Played against some great Mexico teams, Germany. Pavel Nedved was very good. The team Czech Republic. We played against them. Unbelievable player. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those I'd have to think more about and actually go back and look at some team sheets, to be honest. But they're played against some good players, and I even played with some good ones like Thomas Rudzinski with Canada, who had a great career in Europe. Alex Bunbury. There's some good players in Canada in that era. Craig Forrest played a long, long career in the English Premier League. A very good keeper. There's some good players I played with. Got to play, test myself against some really good players. Dwight York was Trinidad and Tobago. He was obviously in his heyday at Man United. So, got to play against some really good players and got to play with some very good players too.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And you mentioned guys like Juninho and Nedved, so many legends during their day, and especially when you play against any of the guys who've ever played for Brazil, especially
Yeah.
during the era that you played, is pretty incredible. And mentioning again Craig Forrest, who had a phenomenal career and played quite long in the Premier League, as a Canadian, and it's really awesome to know. I'm sure when you reflect back on it, maybe in the moment, you're not really, like you mentioned, not being starstruck, not really worrying or thinking about it. But then when it's all said and done, you look back and say, wow, I actually played with some pretty awesome people.
Yeah, and more come to mind. Like if you really think about it, it's just on the spot. It's something sometimes you don't realize against some of the players you played against, right? So yeah, I had a good career, good length of career. You played a lot of great games with the Canadian national team. Had a great time, and a lot of the Gold Cup, winning the Gold Cup in 2000 is still one of the highlights of it, and if not the highlight of my career.
Absolutely. And I don't think there'll ever be a moment that Canadian soccer fans will forget, like Richard Hastings' goal against Mexico in sudden death to win it. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were the person that assisted that goal, correct?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah, it was funny. I was with Richie just over a year ago. Just got to hang out with him for a couple of days and reminisce over that goal. So it was he didn't score a lot, but that was a great goal. Actually, he did extremely well on that goal. The way he took his first touch and finished it it was it was something special. To be fair, his finish. The pass he was given wasn't very good, to be honest. He had a lot to do, and he dealt with it very, very well.
That definitely has to be one of the most iconic games up to this point so far in the Canadian men's national team history, because while you guys beat Colombia, and I think it was Trinidad in the semi, I think it was, and then Colombia in the final, but beating Mexico was like slaying the dragon. That was the ultimate of the ultimate.
Yeah, it was, and just to win it that way in a golden goal and a game we were kind of most of the game under the caution. Just I think it was really early in extra time. They won a corner. And we're like, oh, here we go. And I can't remember who headed the corner out. We just took off in like a track meeting to score and basically run off the field because the golden goal was it was an amazing experience in San Diego in front of a large Mexican fan base. It was a fantastic memory, and I think that kind of gave us the impetus to go on and win the tournament, to just believe in ourselves and know that we could beat anyone in that tournament.
Well, here's to hoping that Canada can make it to a Gold Cup final again and win another to add to the trophy cabinet that needs to be bolstered for this country. But again, it all starts with from the ground up, from the CPL, and the growth of soccer in Canada is on the rise. And I 100% look forward to seeing the way in which it will continue to balloon, and hope to see you playing an integral role in that with what you do in the CPL.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going in the right direction, and I really enjoy watching the national team at the moment. So I look forward to a great future in soccer with the Canadian national team and the CPL. So it's exciting times right now.
Well, it's very exciting times indeed. And with that, Martin, I want to thank you for having been on today's episode. It was absolutely amazing to be able to talk all things sports, CPL, basketball, and really dive into the behind the scenes as to all the experiences you had that influenced your life in sports and the interactions that you had with your family members that have culminated to what you're able to accomplish in your life today. So thank you for being on today's episode.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for listening to today's episode with assistant coach and technical director of Cavalry FC, Martin Nash.